Welcome, everyone, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, igniting leadership excellence. I'm Rick, and this is my co host, Emily.
Hi.
We are on episode 33 today, investing in people. Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. Emily and I talk about anything and everything related to leadership, and we do come from a biblical worldview. And as I mentioned here a few seconds ago, today's topic is investing in people.
Yeah.
So
Let's
go ahead, Emily.
yeah.
Let's take her away.
So we're going to start out with talking about the verse in Luke 12:48 where it says, "For everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be
Mm.
required, and to whom much has been committed, of him they will ask the more." So, how do organizations claim that people are their greatest asset, but do they prove it?
Yes and no. We hear a lot that people will say, leaders will say, bosses will say, managers will say, business owners will say, HR people will say, our people are our greatest asset. Well, do you treat them like they are your greatest asset? Think about that
Mm,
for a minute.
yeah.
Now, I've said in other episodes, and so has Emily, is you don't have to be a firefighter to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
But for those of you who are firefighters and you're out there at the company level, if you're a company officer, a lieutenant, a captain, how do you treat your people? Do you treat your crew like they're the greatest asset that you can have? Do you know, talk down to them? Do you bully them? Do you demean them? Or are you a fantastic leader? Are you someone that they want to work with, that they trust you, that they really do believe, yes, that I am treated like I am the greatest asset? Moving on up the chain of command, shift commanders in police and fire, in the military, EMS. Are your people really your greatest asset, or is that just some type of political mantra that sounds good to the outsiders?
Mm,
For those of you who are in the higher positions and you have to pitch the budget to elected leaders or board members, so forth like that, do you stand in front of them and say, our people are our greatest asset? Yet you cut out training, you cut out bonuses, you seek ways to reduce pay. You look at ways that how you can shaft the employees. And there are organizations out there that are like that. So
mhm.
that's a valid question. Are you actually doing it where their people are the greatest asset? And can you prove it? How can you back that up? How can you back that statement up and go beyond just saying, well, our people here are our greatest asset? Prove it.
Mhm.
Prove that.
Yeah.
So today, besides that right there, we're going to talk
Mhm.
about the benefits of investing in people, the
Mhm.
dangers of failing to do so, and how true leaders develop others.
Yeah. So, why does investing in people matter? And let's talk about including the cost of recruitment, training, and leadership development and why it's a smart investment.
Yeah. Hey, it is not cheap to recruit people.
No.
Perhaps you're a small business owner and you're putting out announcements. I know a lot of business owners use Indeed, and there's going to be a cost to recruiting and training. In the fire department, yeah, there is a cost to recruiting and training. It doesn't come easy. Just the advertisements ahead of time, putting that stuff out there, even if it's posted on LinkedIn or some other form of social media and it's not cost or you're not paying for it, it still costs because some employee in the organization is taking time to develop these things, put these things together and get them out there. Now, I know a lot of fire departments use the National Testing Network. Excuse me. And so, our organization here at Loveland Fire uses them. Well, somebody's got to take care of all that stuff. So there's a cost involved in recruiting. And One story that really comes to mind, Emily, and it happened, I want to say maybe 10 years ago. It might be a little longer than that. A Midwest fire department and how they treated their recruits in the firefighter academy. They instructors would attempt to ride the recruits so hard that they wanted them to go ring a bell, that they
Mm,
would quit. And they had an old oak tree on their training ground. And punishment was to send a recruit over there in full gear, breathing air with an axe and just hack away on that tree until an
mm,
instructor said, stop. Well, that all came to a halt when one recruit died of a cardiac arrest. And when I read about this incident and what took place there, I was just appalled, absolutely appalled. And excuse me again. Sounds like somebody been sitting around watching the Discovery Channel and that program that was out there on Buds Class 234, the SEALs, Buds, Basic Underwater Demolition.
yeah.
And, folks, SEALs, Green Berets, Marine Force Recon, Air Force Pararescue, Coast Guard rescue swimmers, those are all a different level, completely different level. And to get a recruit firefighter and attempt to get them to quit, it's criminal. That's
Mhm.
absolutely criminal. And I go and I think about all the money that is put into the recruiting process, the hiring, the interviews, equipping them with uniforms, personal protective equipment, training equipment, or materials, I should say. All of that, the cost just to have instructors trying to get rid of somebody to ring a bell, and then somebody further up the food chain will say, well, our people are our greatest asset. Not when you're treating them like that.
Yeah.
They aren't. So there is a cost to recruitment, there's a cost to
Mhm.
training, and there's a cost to leadership development, and there's a cost to not train people, and there is a cost for not doing leadership training. Came
Yeah.
across some statistics. Harvard Business Review said organizations spend $60 billion on leadership development, but then they turn around and those same organizations say they're not sure what their return on investment is.
Hmm.
And out of that same survey that was conducted by the Harvard Business Review, the results indicated that only 10% of the leadership training delivered results. What?
Wow.
That's a lot of money being spent on what? So
Yeah.
somebody can hit a check mark. Is that an HR thing? Human resources
Mhm.
thing? Oh, well, we send people through leadership development training and you go to the low bid. Yeah, and you find
Yeah.
somebody and you bring them in. Well, are they providing training that's actually relevant to
Right.
your people? Or is it just some EEOC requirement,
Yeah.
a DEI
I was just gonna say
thing, yeah,
DEI. Yep.
DEI
Mhm.
thing that you hit the
Yeah.
checkbox spending all this money and it's not doing anything. Nothing. Gallup reported 83% of organizations believe it is important to develop leaders, but only 5% of those organizations actually have a leadership development plan.
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then Forbes reports that 90% of leaders stated that they were not prepared for the role they stepped into. Yeah, but yet organizations, our people are our greatest asset. Prove it.
Hmm.
Prove it.
Yeah, those are some pretty stark statistics.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
So what are the long-term benefits for individuals, organizations, and communities with investing in people?
There's definitely those long term benefits that do exist out there. And I know here in a minute you're going to hit on a quote that's very commonly, thrown out there, and maybe some of the people have heard that. But when you invest in the people, yeah, it costs money, but
Yeah.
there's a greater chance that they are going to be more, definitely, they're going to be more efficient. They're going to be more proficient. They're going to be more professional in their job performance. They're going to be more competent in what they are doing. And also, when money is invested in people to go to training, they are being exposed to other people from the same profession, or maybe not
Mm,
even the same profession. Back in 2008, I had the opportunity to go to a government leadership program through the University of Colorado at Denver. It's called the Rocky Mountain Program. It was a week-long program, all government employees at various levels. And there was only three of us out of, I believe there was 30 participants, only three of us that were from fire. We had people from law enforcement, we had dispatchers, we had city planners, county planners, we had finance people, public works people from all the different disciplines in government. And it was great. It's still to this day one of the best leadership courses that I have ever attended. And I was exposed to people in other professions, still
yeah.
working within government because I think most people know government is a unique machine.
Hmm.
Now, but I was exposed to people who were working in these other departments and other areas, hearing their perspectives. I'm able to bring that back to the organization with a totally different perspective. Same thing when I had the opportunity to attend the 4-year executive fire officer program. So for 4 years, 2 weeks at a time, I am there at Emmitsburg, Maryland, at the
Wow.
National Fire Academy with people from other chief officers, and there's a few captains that were in there with us from some of the smaller departments in America. But you hear their perspectives, you hear their challenges, and many, many times people are facing the same thing, and somebody has got an answer that while we are sitting around in our areas trying to bang our head, what can we do about this? And you go to a training like that and you're exposed to other people, other career disciplines. It's like, oh yeah, never thought about that before.
Yeah. So, we'd like to address the common fear that people ask: what if we train them and they leave? Versus, what if we don't train them and they stay?
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the what if we train them and they leave?
Yeah.
Well, they've said it already. How are you treating the people? Yeah, it's a gamble, but won't you rather invest the money in training your people to make them more competent, to make them more
Mhm.
professional, efficient, proficient? And whether or not they stay, yeah, certainly we've seen that in the fire service where people get trained and then they decide to go to another organization because somebody else pays more money or they want to move to another part of the country.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a risk. That's a risk, but to take the mental approach of we're not going to train them because we might lose them. What are the long-term implications on the organization for that?
Yeah.
Now, what areas are they now not being developed in? How could it benefit your organization by training these people? I know of one particular fire department that has supplied fire chiefs to different organizations around the country, and they have invested in their people in training. And when they've gotten up into those other higher captain ranks or chief officer ranks, and they decided, well, yeah, I want to be an assistant chief, deputy chief, division chief, or a fire chief, and it's not going to happen in my organization. So they start looking outwards. But how does that reflect back on that particular organization? It shows that they invest in their people.
Mhm.
And it shows that they essentially are a training ground for, upper level chief officers. And so that reflects very, very well on that organization. The second part of your question there, Emily, what if we don't train them and they stay? Well, what are you getting from quality?
Right.
That's the question. What
Yeah.
what is the quality of your employee? Yeah, so you have to balance this out. Now, I want to highlight something between training and development. And through the Maxwell leadership team that I'm a part of, I have the opportunity to sit in on a variety of different mentorship calls. And well, I think it was last fall sometime, I really heard one of the mentors very clearly describe the difference between training and development. His name's Ray Popham, and he's been a member of the Maxwell leadership team for a number of years. And how he described training is that it teaches a particular skill or behavior, Oftentimes it could be one time or short term, and it's skills based versus development. Development is a process of growing to become more advanced. It's
Mm,
long term. It's a long term thing, and it addresses the overall well being of character growth, barriers to growth, and prepares the person for the future. So,
mhm.
many times, we mix up the words together, training and development, but there really is a distinction and a separation between the two, Emily.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, can you give us an example, either of a personal example or an industry, of how investing in people has led to organizational success?
Yeah, I look back on my career and the opportunities that I've had to go to training, and I didn't always get to go to all the trainings that I asked to go to. No, nobody ever does. There's a number of different factors. It's like, well, there's other people that want to go to training, and sometimes it does come down to a budgetary thing. When
Yeah.
the bean counters cut the budget, typically training is the first area
Yeah.
that gets cut out. But when I look back on my career in the fire service and I look at people who were sent out into the various areas to receive additional training or development, I look at hazardous materials training, confined space training, trench rescue training, rope rescue training, water rescue training. These things, they benefit the organization and they benefit the community because when somebody calls 911, they expect a response. And they're not going to call 911. If somebody has just fallen out of the boat in the lake or they're out in the ocean and their boat's sinking and somebody could call 911, they're not going to say, yeah, I just need to know, are you equipped to do water rescue? No, they're calling 911 because there's a problem and they
Mhm.
expect people to show up to be able to professionally handle the situation that is well at hand
Yeah.
and to save them and get them out of that predicament. And so it benefits the organization by having well-trained people. That's one of the things I really enjoyed about being with Loveland Fire Rescue. I had fantastic opportunities to get trained as a hazardous materials technician under a 160-hour curriculum, a rail car specialist, and many other areas. And then I looked at the other people in the or swift water training. One year we sent a guy to a train the trainer course so he could be an instructor as a public safety diver, which for those people who are listening that are not involved in emergency services, a public safety diver is a whole lot different, a whole lot more grueling that somebody decides to go down to the Grand Caymans and go snorkeling or go diving.
Mhm.
I really admire the people who become a public safety diver and what they have to go through, because I guarantee you, they're diving in conditions that would make a lot of people's hair just absolutely curl up. And so it benefits the organization. And again, it benefits the community,
Yeah.
by investing in people and investing in organizational success. And as I mentioned a few moments ago too, when when your people are exposed to others from other organizations or even other disciplines, they're learning and they're bringing things back that contribute to the growth. When I
Mhm.
went to the National Fire Academy for those 4 years to the program, it didn't just come back and just sit on it. My first year and my third year program, the research papers that came out of that were incorporated in the training in the department. And now, as part of my business, I'm still providing that training, that benefit. So it not only extended out to Loveland Fire Rescue, it extended out to departments within the Front Range Fire Consortium, a
Mhm.
regional consortium. And I've had that opportunity to take that material out to other fire departments in other states and even upcoming here this spring to a large uh, consortium type group on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And so it benefits. There's just tremendous benefits to invest in people for the organizational success.
I think that kind of leads into our next point, that there is a ripple effect of developing leaders.
Yes.
So, how does investing in employees improve the workplace culture, customer service, and productivity? And Gallup identified 7 key components to development. So let's discuss what those are.
Yeah. Before I get into what Gallup identified, those 7 key areas, let's talk about workplace culture. Somebody's working someplace and they want to go to get additional training and are constantly being told, no, 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 we won't send anybody, we won't send anybody. That's ultimately having an impact on the morale of the organization. I have seen it. I have seen it, folks. And we're not just talking about always a budgetary thing where the budget got hacked, we can't send anybody to training this year. I've seen it occur in my organization early on when I came on, is that the only people that were going to training were like a favored status group
Mm,
of people. It was the same ones constantly being sent to training. Hey, that has an impact on morale.
very
That,
missed opportunity.
yep, it creates a lot of angst, it creates a
Yeah.
lot of hate and a lot of discontent in the organization. So people who are in charge, you need to be careful about that stuff. You need to be careful who's being selected to go to training and making sure it's not always the same people.
Yeah.
On the same vein, just because somebody wants to go to a specialized training doesn't mean they should go. That I mentioned public safety divers. Swiftwater rescue is another one. Those people need to be selected to make sure that they've got the not only the physical but the mental capability to perform those actions
Yeah.
in an emergency situation. When I had the hazardous materials team, I ran our hazmat team for 8 years. And I learned the hard way by somebody coming and saying, hey, I want to be a hazmat technician. And then we would put them through a 160-hour curriculum, spend money on it. And then they would freak out
Hmm.
inside the fully encapsulated suit. So I was like, well, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody comes to me and they say that they want to be a part of the hazmat team. I would give them a very brief training, put them
Hmm.
in a level A suit, wearing their SEBA, and put them through a small course that where it would work up their heart rate and their breathing rate and some confined areas just to see. And there was one guy when he got done and we unzipped him, he said, I don't want anything to do with this.
Hmm.
Nothing. Yeah, okay. That's great. Yeah, we helped him
Yeah.
because now he's not going to be freaking out. And we help the organization because we're not spending money on that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can devote it, someplace else. And
And
those,
honestly, in a way, that is kind of helping develop them
yes.
because you gave them the opportunity that they said, like, I want to do this. You figured out how to do it without making it cost so much and putting, so much time and effort into it. But it gave them a really good idea of whether they could do it or not.
Right.
Sometimes you don't know until you try
Yeah,
either.
you're right. You're absolutely right. And that improves workplace culture too, because it's like, wow, really in the end run, it's like, I'm glad I found out now.
Yeah.
And that guy went on to another aspect of the fire within our department. He found another specialty he really shined in. Now, the aspect of, serve if you're a business owner serving the customer from a fire aspect, I don't like that word customer. We serve the citizens. We don't serve customers have a choice. Um, so somebody calling 911 because their house is on fire, they don't go through a menu tree to select a fire department
Thank
based off their
goodness.
customer service. No, they're citizens or, they're tax-paying citizens or they're visiting the area. We serve citizens. And I
Mhm.
think there's a higher calling, to that. But those 7 key areas that Gallup identified in their survey, one of them is building the relationships. And man, I saw this, Emily, when I took over the hazmat team and we're involved, in a regional effort. They're building relationships with the neighboring departments, with the people you're actually going to be working with on larger calls out on the street.
Mhm.
And when you build those relationships, you get to know each other. And I'll
Yeah.
fast forward all the way up to this past December when I was down in Riverside, California, uh, in a hazmat class, teaching in a hazmat class that had people in there from, I believe we had a total of 8, maybe 10 different agencies, and they're getting to know each other. And so when they get some of these bigger hazmat calls and they show up, it's like they know how they operate. And so that building a relationship thing, it reduces the stress on scene. And how can we help each other out?
Yeah.
Develops individuals. Then the second area that they Gallup identified develops individuals, the leader, and the team. And we've hit on that one already. The third
Mhm.
area drives change. Oh no, change. I hate change. Hey, get a grip, people. You know, you started listening to this podcast at a particular time, and it's going to end at a particular time. And between the start and the finish, time has changed. And yeah, and you've gotten older. Life is about change.
Mhm.
And when we send people out and we train them outside training, and they're bringing new ideas back, and you can see the other organizations are struggling in particular areas. It drives that change. And that next area that Gallup identified, it inspires others. It inspires, it does.
Mhm.
Somebody says, hey, I saw, wow, yeah, Joe Schmuckatelli got to go to that training class or that
Yeah.
developmental class. How do I get into that? And I've seen that play out in the fire service. Go to something like, hey, how can I go? To that. It inspires people. Here's a big one that Gallup identified: encourages critical thinking.
Mm.
And I certainly saw that come out in that Rocky Mountain program that I mentioned. And then also the Executive Fire Officer program. Develop
Yeah.
critical thinking skills to be able to look at issues and problems and challenges from a different perspective because of what you have been exposed to. Develops clear communication abilities. When you're out in these training classes or courses, especially the ones that you're starting to get up to higher levels, it is going to develop your ability to communicate with other people. And then also it creates accountability. So what does that mean? You send somebody out to a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 2 week course. They need to be held accountable for what they have learned. What are they doing while they are away?
Yeah.
And are you actually questioning them when they come back? I've
Mhm.
seen it so many times. People get sent out to a course, a training class, and they come back and nothing ever happens. It's because, well, hey, thanks for going.
Mhm.
We really appreciate your willingness to go, Betty. But then the organization won't ask Betty to report back on what she learned.
Yeah.
They won't ask Betty to put together a class and teach everybody else in the organization what she learned. That's
Yeah.
a that's an organizational failure
Yeah.
right there. It's benefited Betty, but it's not benefiting the organization. And
Mhm.
what kind of message does that send to Betty that they just spent money on her to go someplace, but now they don't care what she learned?
Yeah.
How does that impact the rest of the organization as well? So those are really 7 areas that Gallup identified that are quite interesting.
Yeah, that is. So when people grow professionally, what is the impact on their personal relationships, family, friends, and community?
I believe there's a morale impact.
Mm.
When we're talking, we already hit on their building relationships, but you're talking relationships, family, and friends. When people are exposed to these different areas of training and other people, I believe that there's definitely a benefit that extends out there. If we can go someplace, and I'll hone this down to a leadership development course, we can go to a leadership development course and listen to what's being said. Participate. You're probably hearing our dog. She's upstairs and somebody's in delivering a package and now she's going crazy. So Emily and I apologize for that and thank you for bearing with our dog who is barking. But when we come back to the topic, when yes, thank you, Java, for protecting our house. But when we can learn more about ourselves and we are introspective, that's going to have a benefit to family and friends, the organization, and
Yeah.
the community.
Can you give us a real world example of a leader who prioritized mentorship and saw lasting positive effects?
Yeah, Dick Miner
Mm.
and Chief Miner. He died, I believe now is two years ago, and he became the fire chief at Loveland Fire Rescue in January of 1991. And Chief Miner had started, he was originally from Colorado, but he started his career out in California, Santa Barbara County Fire, worked his way up to division chief. He went from there down to the city of Orange in Southern California as the fire chief. Then he went over to Reno, Nevada as the fire chief, and then back to Northern California to Hayward as the fire chief. And then he got hired here. And so he was here from 1991. And if my memory serves me correct, I believe Chief Miner retired in 2000 or 2001 from Loveland Fire. And then he ultimately went on to work for the Platte River Power Authority
Mm,
as the fire chief there. They may have had a different title. And I saw what he did up there in professionalizing their fire brigade.
mm,
But he's a man that would spend time talking to me and mentoring to me. He almost always, not all the time, but he almost always had time to talk to me and mentor me and give me tips on how I could professionally develop on things that I needed to look at. And I mean, and some of the hard stuff too, Emily, there was at one point I had
yeah.
an anger issue, and that first time I took the lieutenant's test and I didn't get it. And I sat down with Chief Miner and he was very blunt. He said, "Young man, if you don't change some things in your life, you will never be promoted in this organization."
Mm,
And that's something that I needed to hear. And
yeah.
that's something that I appreciated from him. And then a year later, I got promoted to lieutenant. When he left the organization and he went to work up there at Platte River Power Authority, he brought me in up there to provide hazardous materials training to the fire department. And I've been in there nearly every year since then. If, and it's attributed to Dick Miner and his trust in me and mentor. He would mentor me then,
Mm-hmm.
and when he started to sell off his fire service collection, we would go over there to the house. And while you and mom and Rebecca were in with his wife and their dog, he's out in the garage mentoring me. When I
Mm-hmm.
got promoted to battalion chief, I called him up. I says, "Hey, chief, I got promoted to BC. Would you be willing to sit down with me and tell me what it's like and what I can expect?" And he said, "Absolutely." So
Mm,
we went to Starbucks and we sat there for about 2 hours. And so he was a fantastic mentor
yeah.
to me. And I still have a lot of things that he gave me, from a tactical aspect. And I mean, he's the guy that really taught me incident command
Hmm.
and how to command that emergencies.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to note that investing in people is not just sending them off to a development training.
Mhm.
It sometimes is like what Chief Miner did with you, is sitting down with the person
Yeah.
and mentoring them and coming alongside
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And hey, folks, don't miss out on those opportunities to mentor someone. Somebody comes to you and they say, "Hey, could you be my mentor?" You know, if you're so busy you can't, then evaluate that. Is there something that you can drop that you can mentor this individual? If you're capable of being a mentor, but you're not making yourself available, consider making yourself available to help somebody else out.
Yeah. So we've touched on the benefits of investing in people, but what is the cost of failing to invest in people?
Well, from the training aspect, the cost of failing to invest in people is, are people keeping up with the changes in the profession? Fire service changes a lot. And so are people keeping up with the changes? That they're not going to an outside training, or the department is not bringing somebody in to provide that training. What's the impact of not keeping up with the changes that are taking place in the fire service?
Yeah.
And there's the other nasty, nasty side to this thing, and that's people in an organization who refuse to send their people to any type of a training because they're afraid they might learn more than me.
Mm,
You might come back smarter than me, and I don't want that. I can't have a threat to my kingdom.
hmm.
So we're going to keep you down. Yeah, we're going to keep you down. And then you got that in my book. I call him the Pied Piper of popularity. That falls into that same category. It's like, I'm going to be careful what trainings I send you to because I'm the popular guy. And I don't want anybody becoming more popular. And I'm going to develop followers and not leaders. We talked about that in one of our episodes
Yeah.
last year. You know, people who fail to develop leaders. They'd rather
Hmm.
have a following because we have a following, you got people kissing your rear end.
Yeah.
You're developing leaders. You just actually might be developing somebody who can take your position,
Yeah.
which we should be. We should be developing leaders so they can step in and fill that gap when we leave. But the kingdom builders out there, it's short lived. And
Hmm.
you know, by failing to provide developmental training, there's a failure to bridge gaps.
Yeah.
There's a failure to bridge gaps with people as individuals. There's a failure to bridge those larger cultural gaps. And organizations have a culture. Yeah, every organization, I don't care what it is, fire, police, EMS, the hospital, the library, the finance department, the military, Jiffy Lube, everybody had Red Robin,
Yeah.
everybody has a culture. And so when we're not training people, we're not developing people, we can see these gaps that start to exist in there. And one of the big gaps that will pop up is the us versus them
Mm.
mentality.
Yeah.
And so we want to overcome that.
Yeah. So, what are some practical steps we can take to invest in people?
I've already talked about mentorship.
Hmm.
Mentor, mentor, mentor. You say, I don't know how to mentor people, Rick. Go to the show notes, get my contact
Get mentored by
information.
you.
Yeah, well, number one, yeah, I can mentor you and coach you. But number two is with the help of Emily over here. 2 years ago, I believe it was, I wrote a 7-part series on my blog about mentoring.
Yeah.
And it's called Dual Footprints Becoming a World Class Mentor. And where Emily came into play with that is she turned it into a very beautiful ebook. So and that's a free resource. It's amazing how sometimes people don't accept things. I offered that after teaching a class. It wasn't a fire related class, it was in another organization. I offered that and I had about 50 people in the room. That's free. How to become a mentor, world class mentor. One person took advantage of that. One person.
Hmm.
So it shows me the other 49 is either I was a moron in how I was teaching this stuff,
No.
or they just plain didn't care.
Yeah.
And so in the previous episode before this one, I talked about the difference between mentoring and coaching. Mentoring is that person who's got the experience. They've been down the road, like Dick Miner. They've been down the road. They can ask questions. I've never been a battalion chief before. I don't know what to expect. And so I say, hey, help me out here, chief. That's what a mentor does versus a coach that asks questions, draws out the answers from inside.
Hmm.
Other ways, leadership training programs, not a 2 or 3 hour one and done training, but an actual bona fide program. Encourage people in continuing education and skill building. You know what, folks? Sometimes you
Hmm.
just might have to pay for it yourself,
Yeah.
and you just might have to do it on your own time. Yeah, that's what happened with my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. We paid for it ourselves. And why? Because I wanted to get it. And I did it as an adult while I was working in the fire department, raising a family. It's called sacrifice. You have to sacrifice. And I've run into, and I don't know if police is like this or EMS or any other organization. I suspect so because it's human beings, but there's far too many firefighters out there that say, well, is the fire department going to pay for this? Am I going to get overtime for this? You know what? I would not want you on my shift. Yeah, frankly, would not want you on my shift because you don't even uh, demonstrate a desire or a zeal to improve yourself. If you're that one that's always constantly looking for somebody else to pay for you to do it, or to get overtime to do it. It's like, yeah, I'm not a BC anymore, but I want you on the shift.
Mm-hmm.
And then leaders, it's incumbent upon you to develop a culture of trust and communication and a culture. Somebody coined it, an author, and right now it slips me, but a learning organization. Is your organization learning?
Yeah. So, as the leader, how do you recognize potential in others and cultivate it?
That can be a difficult thing. And we have to observe and watch people. There's always the blowhard that's out there that talks a good talk,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. They
Yeah.
they are just all talk.
No
I had a
walk.
conversation this past Thursday with two other men in a small group that I'm involved with, and we talked about an individual that is continually coming to the three of us, and he's asking for our input and how he can develop his business. What ideas do you have, so forth and so on, like that. He never implements anything. He
Mm,
tells us what he's good. Well, I got this going, I got that going. And then a week goes by. So, well, what about that? Well, I couldn't get around. I couldn't get
mm,
around to that. There's always going to be okay. There's no potential in somebody like that.
yeah.
But watch people, observe them, listen to what they say. Are they curious? Do they ask questions? The person who's asking questions, and I'm not talking about the challenging the authority type question. I'm talking about I want to grow, I want to learn,
Yeah.
those type of questions.
Eager.
Eager. Yep, they're eager, they're interested, they have character, they have
Yeah.
integrity. Look at them and say, this individual has got potential. And being able to discern that potential comes as an experiential thing as well, as we,
Mm-hmm.
as the leaders, gain gain that experience.
Yeah. So, to recap this episode, the key takeaways is investing in people is a
Yes,
responsibility, not an option.
absolutely. It's a responsibility. And
Yeah.
it's a duty. And I don't look at that four-letter word duty as a four-letter cuss word. No, we as leaders have a duty to invest and develop other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to grow the organization, invest in people.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always mean that you got to send money down the pipeline so they can go through a course. One of the things that just grates on me is when I hear chief officers say, "I don't have the time to visit the fire stations." Over the weekend, I listened to a podcast. It's called Beneath the Helmet. And the host, his name is Arjuna George. And he was interviewing Frank Lieb, a retired chief officer from FDNY, the Fire Department of New York. And you know what Chief Lieb was talking about? He was talking about the importance of the chief officers getting out into the fire stations and visiting their people.
Yeah.
This is the largest fire department
Wow.
in the world. And he's saying that their chief officers get out and they visit the people in the fire stations. And then when I hear chief officers here in Colorado
Mm-hmm.
say, I just don't have the time to do that. You need to take an examination there on
Mm-hmm.
that one right
Yeah.
there. It's a responsibility. You're in a leadership position. You have a responsibility to develop others. If you're not interested in developing others, hey, for the sake of everybody else,
Don't be in a leadership role.
yeah, don't be in a leadership role. So you want to
Yeah.
step down. Go back to riding on the rear step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Well, do you have anything else for this episode before we conclude?
I I don't think so, Emily. Good leaders develop other good leaders.
Yeah.
And I cannot overstate the importance of developing people and investing in people. It's such a tremendous responsibility that we have as leaders is to help others out. So that's all I have to say. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think we just like to challenge our listeners that try to identify one person that you can start investing in this week.
Yeah, that's a good challenge. That's
Yeah.
a very good challenge. So folks, that's it. Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, Igniting Leadership Excellence, episode number 33, Investing in People. If you found this episode to be useful, Please like, subscribe, and share. Visit my website,
Mhm.
www.fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. Link is in the show notes. You can see what services I offer. On my website, you can also visit my blog link in the upper left-hand corner. I post my blog on my website at 0500 Mountain Time on Mondays, and then again on my LinkedIn profile at 0500 Mountain Time on Wednesdays. So, thank you for listening, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.